Welcome back to Toyota Sports Talk. We've got Jake Russell of the Washington Post joining us today. He's our Commanders and our Nationals guru. We're going to cover both of those things with him today. But first and foremost, Jake, how are you doing? It's been a few weeks.
I'm doing great. Football season's here, so I can't really complain too much. How have you been?
I've been great, but you and me both, and I think a lot of people are saying the exact same thing. Football season is here. Get on board. If you're not, then you're going to get left behind because already we're 2 weeks in. The Washington Commanders, they are 1-1. I think it sounds a lot better than 0-2, perhaps. They just defeated the New York Giants, of course, 21-18. It wasn't the prettiest game, Jake, I'll be honest. But what were maybe some of your major takeaways from that victory over the Giants?
So it showed signs of a team that's in transition. Obviously, it's hard to envision a team having that many red zone trips and not scoring a touchdown once.
You look at the scope of the game and it was a team versus no kicker versus a team with all kicker. And I just thought that was just so funny the way that one played out. What's interesting though is that you could look at this from either a glass half full or a glass half empty perspective. Glass half full, this was a team that was able to get to the red zone several times. Half empty, they weren't able to convert with 6 points. What kind of perspective are you taking here? Because I know it's kind of a balance.
So personally, I'm typically a glass half empty guy, but I'm riding the fence on this one. I look at it both ways. It was really good to see them actually drive the ball down the field the way they did and maintain possession of the clock that the way they did. They dominated time of possession the whole game, but not getting at least one touchdown is a little concerning, especially with a team like the Bengals coming up and, you know, how your secondary has been struggling since, you know, last season and it didn't look very improved. In week 1 against Tampa, you're going to have to face, a combo of Jamar Chase and probably T. Higgins and with Joe Burrow throwing them the ball. And they almost came out with a win in Kansas City on Sunday. That's going to be a very tough matchup.
Oh, yeah. We're all just here for the ride, for the fun of it at the end of the day. I want to talk a little Jayden Daniels because he had I would say, a step in the right direction when it came to his just, progression every week. I think he's starting to understand that he cannot run as often as he can. And I know a lot of those runs, it has to do when plays break down. He did have, I believe, several less carries than the prior week. How are you kind of breaking down his progression right now and what you've seen on Sunday?
So the 16 carries against Tampa was pretty alarming, but I feel like when I watch him, I feel like he is pretty smart and picky about when he does run. And whenever I watch the games, I see him, it's like he's got a really clear path to wherever he's running to. He knows where he's going, and he knows, for the most part, what to do to avoid contact. And if he does get close to somebody, he's got just this quick twitch movement. He could just make a move in a split second just to get even more break from the person he's running away from. And that's just been really impressive to me. I like his vision that he has so far for the most part, but I like his poise, his composure, his moxie, if you will. He's got a very mature and veteran presence about him when it comes to approaching the game, I think.
What about the defense? Because that was another area of the ball I think took a step forward. And granted, the Buccaneers are a very different team than the New York Giants. How are we kind of gauging that progress on that side of the ball? Because like you mentioned, Monday Night Football, the Cincinnati Bengals are a different beast.
Exactly. Yeah. The true test is when you go up against these high-powered offenses. The Giants are not a high-powered offense, especially without Saquon Barkley. The Bengals are much different. They have a lot more weapons. They've been together for longer than the Giants' offense has so far with their top players. Defensively for Washington, they've lacked the pass rush that they should have, especially with Dan Quinn coming on board as a defensive mastermind and Joe Witt. I just assumed that they would, start off better than this. I expected, from what I've understood, it just seems like they've gotten a lot more hands-on coaching than they did with the last coaching regime. It seems like they're more detail-oriented, the coaches are, but it hasn't fully translated to the field yet.
Jake, I want to switch over to the Nationals and talk a little baseball now because, yes, this perhaps was the season we expected from our Washington Nationals. They are eliminated from the postseason, but this year was all about that rebuild. I don't think anyone expected, maybe a lot of people did expect the playoffs, but they didn't expect this team, to make it to a World Series. Let's just say that. When it comes to that rebuild, though, the big thing this year was expediting that rebuild, shortening the process, I should say. Do you think that happened?
I think it did. They fell short of what I was expecting. I think last time you and I talked, I think I said that my expectations coming into this year was they should hover somewhere around 500 and kind of nip at the ankles of the wild card teams. Well, record-wise, they've gone downhill since then. but they've over the course of the year they have shown there have been a lot of bright spots with their young players, especially their pitching. Guys like DJ Hurst and Mitchell Parker and Jake Irvin have had really big moments, I think, this season, and give the fans, I think, a lot of reason for positivity for next year. For me, I think the biggest question is whether ownership will actually spend money in the offseason to, fortify this roster, because they need to mix in some veteran players. They'll need a first baseman. They'll need a designated hitter. They'll need at least one or two veteran starting pitchers, top of the line starting pitchers. They'll need more relievers. Obviously, the bullpen has been hit or miss this year with a few quality performances by the Finnegans and the like. I think they need to fortify that this offseason. That's truly going to be, the true test of where they think they are in this rebuild. They should be turning the corner, I think, and I guess I'll have to recalibrate, as Dan Quinn says, recalibrate my expectations. So maybe next year will be the year they hover around 500 and nip at a wild card spot, potentially, depending on who they add.
Well, you're the absolute best. So thank you so much, Jake, and stay with us. We've got so much more Toyota Sports Talk coming your way on the other side of the break.